It's rabbit season. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another legacy video, and Porter gave me a donation deck list. I know that Porter likes white cards, and I have some of the spiciest white cards possible today, including some from Assassin's Creed and Bloomburrow. So yesterday I was playing in a league where I faced a very neat deck that you see pictured here, piloted by Delthar. And there's a lot of cool things here. Let's start with the bird. Senu, Keen-Eyed Protector. Flying Vigilance 2/1 for 2 mana, unexciting. Exile Senu, you gain 2 life and scry 2. When a legendary creature you control attacks and isn't blocked, if Senu is exiled, put it onto the battlefield attacking. So let's talk about what's going on here in terms of value. You can begin the game by exiling a Senu with something like a Solitude or a Chrome Mox, giving you that short-term burst of advantage or that short-term tempo boost. And then, when something like your Felia or your Thalia attacks and is not blocked, you get to return this. Or, let's say you are attacking with a Felia and a Senu. You could do something like, okay, attack, exile Senu, gain 2 life, scry 2. Felia, legendary creature, is not blocked, then Senu can go and come back from exile immediately, meaning that you kind of gain both the damage aspect of this card and its tap ability in the same turn cycle. And this is just our starting point, because we are a rabbit-themed deck in Legacy, believe it or not. We have a Rabbit Lord that lets us scry when rabbits, birds, mice, or bats enter. Notably, Bird Scout. We have the Jacked Rabbit that can create a large number of rabbits in theory. If you just play this out as a 2-mana creature, it's only creating 1 rabbit. But endgame, if you've got a bunch of mana and you can dump a bunch of mana into this Ravenous X value, you could be making 3 or 4 rabbits on attack. Rabbits, which might trigger Harvestrite Host. Whenever it or another rabbit you control enters, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Then draw a card if it is the second time this ability has resolved this turn. And our ultimate rabbit haymaker, I guess, is Warren Warleader. This is basically a Hero of Bladehold style card. Whenever you attack, you either get a 1/1 rabbit that is tapped and attacking, or attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This has the Offspring ability, meaning that if you do have 6 total mana, you can get a second 1/1 token copy of it, meaning that you could give all of your creatures +1/+1, you could make 2 things, or do a mixture of them. This is pretty powerful. Generally speaking, as far as notes go, we are a touch light on mana at 22 total mana sources. We are an aggro deck, so ultimately I think that is okay. Keep in mind that if we need a bunch of mana, we won't super reliably draw that mana. The sideboard is filled with pretty pointed normal hate cards here. We have some graveyard hate, some degree of storm hate, some degree of artifact hate, which notably are legendary creatures for the purposes of Senu, and some generic removal spells. This is really fun. This is how I am spending my Saturday morning voluntarily. So let's battle here. If you need any of these cards, because there's a lot of oddballs in this deck that even people with a pretty good Legacy collection might not have, please consider checking out my sponsor, toamagic.com. You always get free shipping if you order online. If you're going to a big event, you can usually place your order online and pick it up on site, skipping the line. Promo code ThrabenU will even save you 5% on your order. Let's battle. Hey, Phil from the future here. If you want to watch the rabbits pop off and you don't have a lot of time, round 4 is my recommended round. So in a deck with as few mana sources as this one, this sort of thing is occasionally going to happen where we physically just do not have enough mana to play the game here. This one I think I like. We can do a turn 1 Felia, putting Senu under Chrome Mox, and then bring Senu back. I think that's fine. I'm going to get rid of the Witch Enchanter here and keep the Solitude. The Solitude might end up being a little difficult to play overall, but I think the dream of Senu plus Felia is strong enough that I just try to realize that dream. You can make an argument that I should not play Felia with Flash, that I should go ahead and just sorcery speed it to play around Daze. We don't know whether or not we are playing against a Daze deck. And I could do it in response to that fetch land there as well, but I was in the middle of talking, so I didn't. I believe it was correct to do this play while Scalding Tarn was on the stack. We are not punished. Oh, so I think we're going to do this way. So Solitude, pitch this Senu. So we'll get rid of the Delver. I want to go to combat, declare attackers, send this in. I could get rid of my Chrome Mox here to put a +1/+1 counter on Felia against the Daze deck, even though I don't think my opponent... Oh, maybe if I don't think my opponent has Daze, it's just fine to do. Oh, wait, shit, this is not a May? Oh, interesting wording. I guess they thought of multiple of these. Thought I was going to get to leave one hanging out in exile. That's fine. I still want this +1/+1 counter, because as soon as Felia is at 4 toughness, game changes. But I could have done this differently. You leave the one under Chrome Mox for a turn. No, but the +1/+1 counter. I really expected this to be a May. Second land drop from the opponent. Now, if our opponent plays something like a Psychic Frog, we can keep that Psychic Frog from blocking, and we can make it so that the +1/+1 counters don't necessarily accumulate. We'll see what's going on. I mean, I fully expect Underground Sea right here. Delver? My opponent has left up Volcanic Island very suspiciously. I can't tell if my opponent is thinking very hard or if they are doing something like double queuing. Okay, sure. That's not great. So it's now very early on in the game. I did not successfully get Felia out of Lightning Bolt range, which was something I was intentionally trying to do. My opponent can run away with this one pretty easy. Psychic Frog now very good. A larger creature such as a DRC, very good. Murktide Regent, very good. Force of Will, relatively strong because I am in just top deck mode. That is a Psychic Frog, which went from not a real problem to a very big problem in a turn cycle. Well, I can't keep taking hits from Delver. I will trade for the Delver. That's all right, but I am in a terrible position. I'm not going to immediately concede, but I am probably going to give it about 2 draw steps and then concede. This game is over. Psychic Frog is just going to do Psychic Frog things. This represents a giant creature. It represents potentially unfair graveyard things. It's an evasive body, card advantage. Yep, so my opponent got an unchecked Psychic Frog on turn 3 and won the game. Things were already bad before that, admittedly. Sure. Land instant creature sorcery. This is a 3/3. I think if my draw step is dead, I am just going to concede. My opponent has a 3/3 plus some amount of additional power, and it looks like another creature as well. Yeah. Assuming Force of Will is backing this up, I don't think anything in my deck gets rid of enough bodies here for this to be viable. Like, I can Swords this. I guess I can keep playing. I think it's over, especially if the Force of Will just takes this card out. Yep, we're donezo. So any additional removal spells we have are cool. I don't love March. It is mana inefficient. Wrath of the Skies is a way to potentially clear multiple small bodies at once if we end up in a position like the one we were in last game. So I think I will play these. And I could see sideboarding going 2 ways. We could board out some number of X1 creatures that are bad against things like Orcish Bowmasters or a Spicy Plague Engineer or something like that. Or we could board out some of our more expensive cards. My removal being efficient is really important. I think I'm going to go down on Thalia's. But doing so puts me pretty low for the Senu count. Having no reps in with this deck, just literal 0 games before that one, I don't know how bad that is. My opening hand does not have the removal that I want, and I am not counting this as removal. This is a mana source in our, 2022 mana source deck. Guide of Souls is a relatively powerful spiraling card. That's not a removal color unless it's randomly a Dismember. All right, we need a little more mana here. I'm going to give my Love Tap for 1. We don't have energy yet. 19. We're playing this as a land and dropping Guide of Souls number 2. The energy can add up very, very quickly here, and we'll pass. The Witch Enchanter is land number 3. That gets me to the host. If I just keep drawing mana sources, like, that's cool. This thing can create a large number of creatures in a relatively powerful way. We're hoping for no Psychic Frog. Fortunately, we don't get what we want. Alright, so Witch Enchanter, always land, always shocking. I think I get rid of my most expensive card here. So around days, let's attempt to do this. Cool, it works. That is very lucky. So I've got 3 energy when the stack clears, so Guide of Souls ability is now live. And now I just think about whether or not I want to play some of this stuff around days. The Jacked Rabbit is so much better if I don't. I think it's so much better when I don't that I go ahead and play it into days here. Yep, that's fine. But like curving that with the extra power into this the following turn is really, really, really good. Yes, pay for this ability, grow one of these. With 2+1/+1 counters, one of these is now outside of range of Lightning Bolt, which is fantastic. I now have a 3/4 flyer that outpaces some of the DRC style cards. Alright, opponent is using their turn for selection. That is probably good for me on average. There's the fetch land to clear, which my opponent is not using immediately. So this rabbit gets played around days. If my opponent has a removal spell, they fire it off here in response. It is a counter spell instead. We'll send on in for 4 points of damage. I have no energy to pay into this. Seems like my opponent has a Fatal Push or Lightning Bolt. Cool, it's Lightning Bolt, so it's killing this one, not this one. That's fine. Down to 10. We have now seen 2 of the dazes. If I draw something like a 4-drop, I'm okay just slamming that into this board. We have Murktide Regent here. It is indeed a 7/7 Murktide Regent. So my board is currently stalled. Murktide represents a 3-turn clock. I have a handful of removal spells that I can draw, which help out in this scenario. That was incredibly lucky, and we'll bash in for 3. Very much feeling the fact that I am an aggro deck here. I'm not drawing any additional cards, not cracking any clues, anything like that, that it's giving me card advantage. Yep. So, the Psychic Frog now wins combat. If my opponent discards 2 cards, they have a 3/4 Psychic Frog, meaning that this bounces. Despite how bad this creature is, I am going to play this for literally 1 energy. And the thing that sucks here is that my opponent can draw a card and then attack into my creature, whereas I don't have reasonable attacks. If I attack and my opponent discards both of those cards, I bounce in combat. And then my opponent has a giant creature that's drawing cards. I could try to force it. That loses very heavily to Lightning Bolt. I think I'm just chilling, and I hate it. Opponent gets some selection, and some more selection. This one notably allows a shuffle off the Brainstorm. My opponent does not take. Bobbles, whatever. Alright, they know my next draw. Doesn't matter, because I'm playing it immediately, pretty much no matter what. Unholy Heat. That is incredibly unfortunate. So now Psychic Frog does Psychic Frog things, and my opponent has a one-sided Howling Mine. Yeah, combat math doesn't matter. If I block, my opponent discards their card and wins combat. Very cool, well-designed, balanced card that will be banned in December, and we can all look forward to it. My opponent draws their card. They know the next card that I'm going to draw here. I will go to Punchies. I will Punchies. Note that I can't even really profitably double block Psychic Frog. My opponent will have 3 cards, creating a 4/5 creature, which outdoes 2 of my creatures. My total of 6 mana worth of creatures, just in case anyone's counting at home. My opponent's choosing not to shuffle, so all those various cards off the Brainstorm were just good. Thanks, I hate it. Yeah, again, blocks are not reasonable versus Psychic Frog. It is a creature that invalidates basic combat math. Well, opponent keeps hitting land drops instead of having spells, which I guess is good for me. Unless it's not. What the fuck do you need 4 mana for? Alright, it is a Murktide Regent and another Psychic Frog. Cool. Fun. Now, in case you're not familiar with this interaction, whenever an instant or sorcery leaves your graveyard, you put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide Regent. Psychic Frog can make cards leave my opponent's graveyard at will. This is incredibly bad for me. I mean, I click on my cards, but, you know, we don't have any meaningful decisions. My opponent wins every combat step. Let's just tap out here. I think I am not going to pretend that we're going to win this one.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists, and they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out.
Okay, let's play some Magic the Gathering, shall we? We're just going to get rid of the expensive card here and play Rabbit into Rabbit and see how that feels. The goal is to go wide very quickly. All right, we are probably just playing against another Blue-Black X Psychic Frog deck, unfortunately. Bug Psychic Frog. Oh, fuck. JK, never mind. I hate this turn. Every play that I have is bad. Every single one. So, like, always that. If I play Jacked Rabbit for 2 mana, I am not optimizing the power of this card in a very fast matchup. If I play Jacked Rabbit for 3 mana, Daze is online. If I Solitude pitch Jacked Rabbit, I clear the board before my opponent has used any resources, and then they just, like, throw down a Blighted Agent and get me. But we live in a world where my opponent for 1 green mana can give their stuff hexproof. I'm blanking on the name of the card right now. So, like, if I wait on a removal spell, I potentially die. So we're going to attempt to prolong the game here. But this sucks. And I just have no source of card advantage coming. No Recruiter of the Guard, no Yorion, nothing like that. So we just kind of have to hope that my opponent does not have another Infect creature and just bottoms out like this. Next land drop. I don't care. We can get attacked a 1 power creature more or less forever and be okay with that. So if my opponent does not deploy creatures this turn, I should expect that they have some number of pump spells in hand or a defensive spell that was not usable at the time when I cast Solitude. That's not the worst, but it's certainly not great. Force of Will, Pitching Daze. You got it. So final card in hand could be a pump spell. It seems like my opponent has drawn a creature. Yeah, there's the aforementioned Blighted Agent, attacking for a minimum of 2 Infect per turn cycle, which is a 10-turn clock all by itself. Very likely much shorter than that. Yep. Alright, so now we have 4-drop around Daze. Note that something like Invigorate Berserk could kill me immediately. There is an Embiggen, giving that creature +4/+4. Meaning that I am dead in 2 more attack steps, and my removal spell might not actually be live if I top deck one. We play a Rabbit. I am dead unless I top deck a Swords to Plowshares, and it resolves, as this is an unblockable creature. We are also dead to any pump spell here. Not dead this turn. Dead on board, though. And my opponent has another creature, so yikes. Very little agency that game. So I have 4 removal spells that I can board in. Destroying artifacts and enchantments can be okay for something like an Inkmoth Nexus, but doing so at sorcery speed isn't really what I'm looking for. So this is probably a time where my most expensive stuff comes out, since this is just a very, very, very fast matchup. I don't have Wastelands in this deck either, so I can't attack Inkmoth Nexus this way. Yeah, I'll keep this hand. I can pitch Senu to Solitude or Chrome Mox. I'm probably not going to play Chrome Mox on turn 1. I just don't know that it makes sense, since I'm not just immediately slamming a Thalia or a Felia or whatever. So we will just lead on Guide of Souls and pass and see what our opponent does. A Noble Hierarch. I could remove that with a removal spell. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to go, yeah. I think I assume that I'm pitching Senu to Solitude and that I still need this Chrome Mox mana, so I'm just going to put an expensive card under this Chrome Mox, play my Thalia to make my opponent's defensive options worse, gain my energy. I'm okay punching in. If my opponent wants to trade something like an Invigorate for my Guide of Souls, I think I am fine with that. Or Invigorate's a bad option after Thalia resolves, but would have made the attack otherwise anyway. Lighted Agent. You got it. So let's now attempt Solitude hitching the Senu, which can come back in a minute, and we attempt to get Blighted Agent. Force of Will is still a thing that can happen here. Fantastic. So now I'm okay with this being dazeable because this energy matters a lot. We're going to go to combat. We're going to send in with both of these. We'll absolutely pay the energy. I am interested in the Thalia having the flying because I want my creature to be unblocked here. Thalia is unblocked. Now I had a bird enter, so I get a scry 1. This is the wrong game for this card. We will bottom that. We're at 24, and then our opponent's at 11 when this is all said and done. Now, my opponent has an Inkmoth Nexus that they can fire off. Some bad things can still happen here. With the Thalia in play, it's a little harder for me to just outright die. Does this have a non-land clause on it? Swords to Plowshares on Thalia. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6, would be 7, 8 this turn. This is Vigilant, notably. I think I'm holding up a March on an Inkmoth Nexus in the short term. All right. Our opponent takes 4, going to 7. I think I'm just passing the turn with this spell available. It seems very likely that I get an aggro kill next turn if I don't randomly die to card plus card direct infect damage here. I'm going to let my opponent continue the turn. It seems like they're going to draw a card with Tamiyo. I'm going to just let that happen. I'm just going to take the 1 here. I'm not going to block. I don't want a weird combat trick to potentially take my opponent off of lethal here. This is fine. Mana's a little awkward. So now I can try to start putting Inkmoth Nexus into chump block mode. With a Vigilant creature, I think that's okay. Do not want that plains. I think we're going to go ahead and send in with everything here. This is threatening lethal. I imagine that we are going to see a chump block of some kind. We do. My opponent takes 5, going to 2. This is still okay. And Invigorate. Yeah, you've got it. Then crack a clue. That's fine. Oh, sure. So then my opponent can tap that for mana. Take something else out. What a lucky draw. Oh, yeah, that's very bad. My opponent only ends up taking 3 there. And now we're in theoretical lethal, but probably not actualized lethal mode. And Tamiyo starts to get annoying. I'm going to take 1 from the Tamiyo while my opponent investigates. That is all fine with me. March being mana inefficient here is pretty annoying. Wow, I wish I had 1 more energy. Yeah, so like if this is a path to exile here, I can very easily path and swords in the same turn. If I want to do that right now, I also have to get rid of Jacked Rabbit, which I'm not excited about doing, but I may just be doing. Tamiyo doesn't kill me, but the Inkmoths do relatively easily at that. There is an animated Inkmoth. I'm just going to swords that immediately. My opponent will float the mana and use it to animate the other one. Now that's a creature. Now bam, bam, exile this, and take out the Inkmoth Nexus. Opponent will use that mana to grab a clue, or not. Oh, was it summoning? No, it wasn't summoning sick or anything. It just seems like a misplay. All right, opponent is at 1. Oh, I see. Not a misplay. 1 life. That is probably not helping my opponent. All right, Tamiyo is being held back. I would love to draw literally any castable creature. I did not. I mean, I'm crashing in. Make them have it. It's real bad if they do have it, though. Okay, nope, this is just chump block mode. I will play this as a land so that I don't cost myself some life. I don't have a soul land or anything that I can top deck. What the fuck? I'm upset. So do I just need to junk Senu here to scry 2 to attempt to answer that because I just lose the game if I don't? I'm just not going to come back from card advantage plus 5/5 lifelinker. I think so. Am I okay with drawing swords and then Jacked Rabbit? Yes, that seems fine. Now, notably, the swords here means that this is live again. Now my opponent can start attacking with their Tamiyo. I end up in this really awkward position where I have to decide whether or not I am playing around days. as my opponent's final card when not playing around Dazed is Daze is incredibly important to my ability to easily go wide of what my opponent has to offer. Like, this resolving is the one energy I need to have this fly and become a bigger body. But my opponent has shown me Swords to Plowshares, so, like, a single body might not be enough. I am not going to play around Daze. Okay. Opponent did not even attempt to crack for it, which probably means that Daze is not currently in their deck, which is really nice information. I don't need to play around Daze in the future, in theory. Now they are cracking the clue. So yes, I will pay, get my counters. Some number of counter spells probably came out at the cost of bringing in things like swords and triumphs. Tameo keeps doing Tameo things. I'll take one. Cracking a clue. Guess my opponent would, in theory, like to draw another card, transform Tameo, make the smaller rabbits that I create less of a problem. Sure. I'll do this. Alright, that's good enough. Well, that was stressful as fuck. About the only other change I could make is bring in Containment Priest over something like the Host here, so that if I assemble Thalia plus Containment Priest, I can have a way to repeatedly exile creatures. But Containment Priest does get in the way of Senu. If a non-token creature would enter and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. And Senu is not a May. I can't just leave Senu chilling until I'm ready. So I don't think I'm going to Containment Priest. I kind of hate that I basically need to remove every creature on site in this matchup, because Tameo spirals, Triumph of St. Catherine spirals, Infect creature threatens to combo kill me. I could just Caracas that. If I'm doing that, though, my mana gets tied up off and on all game. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think I'm just going to permanently answer it. So let's Swords that. There's an Ink Moth. There's a Blighted Agent. Thanks, I hate it. Thalia is awkward here, as I have multiple cheap spells that I would love to fire off. Let's go, yeah. I am just going to Swords the Blighted Agent now. I have March available if I need it. Like, if my opponent fires off Inkmoth Nexus and threatens a bunch of damage, I will do it. This is the sort of situation where I can potentially just bounce that. All right, my opponent did not do anything with that mana. End of turn. I am okay just trying to take this Tameo out of play. Again, my mana efficiency problems are so real right now. I will just be playing this as a land. I am choked on mana. Do I Thalia? I play Thalia. I can still do an exile cost for March, getting rid of the other Thalia. I don't love it. I think it's happening. I just feel so incredibly inefficient. There's an Ink Moth. We are not responding to this thing coming in. My opponent fires off a removal spell, or sorry, a pump spell, like cool, we'll talk. Otherwise I can think about March at end of turn. I don't really hate that. We'll get rid of the redundant Thalia and attempt this. My opponent's sitting on a bunch of cards, so I assume that a protection spell of some kind is going to be used here. But it is better to get through these now instead of getting through them when it kills my stuff. So Legolas's quick reflexes on lands in particular is pretty annoying, as we are seeing here. So my protection spell fails. I think if I'm going to win this game, I need to cast a big spell here. So this is Dazable, this is Force of Willable. My opponent can combo kill me. Yep. But this game is not going well for me, and I think I just have to take some degree of risk there, especially after our opponent in the previous game was behaving in ways that made it appear that Daze was not going to be in their deck, but I may have just read too much into that. Yeah, no, I hate this. Yeah, so I'm just passing the turn here. My Thalia is not super strong right now. I don't have anything I can blink for value. I am at the mercy of my opponent's deck. If they draw something like a Triumph, I probably lose to it. If they draw a strong pump spell, I probably lose to that. Oh fuck, I missed my timing on this while talking. That one's on me. So let's resolve this, and then bounce the Tameo. Give my opponent a clue they didn't need to have. Hey, that's not bad. We are just gonna normal attack here. We're gonna force my opponent to just crack their clue now. Make sure they don't want to use their mana for something else. Yep, that's fine. So my current plan involves end of my opponent's turn, cast a Solitude, attempting to kill an Inkmoth Nexus, and then do cool things afterwards. We're not going to mess around with trying to kill this thing in combat, unless my opponent plays a pump spell that is threatening lethal. We'll take the chip infect damage right now. Now that is threatening lethal, so I respond with Solitude. Daze or Force of Will gets me here. Legolas's Quick Reflexes gets me. Yep. So with that, I am dead. I gave my opponent a card that I didn't need to give them. Top of the deck, not looking good though. Okay. I don't have anything cool to do with the Senu without a Solitude or a Chrome Mox. I've turn 1 Guide of Souls, maybe turn 2 Thalia. This hand doesn't feel that strong. Maybe I am just going to keep it anyway, assuming that a very large number of draws improve this hand. Maybe Painter? Goblins. Sure. Another Guide of Souls is not bad. I'm going to play Witch Enchanter as a land immediately rather than Caracas. If one of these gets wastelanded, I think I want it to be this one. My Caracas has a lot of theoretical utility in this matchup. If we end up in end game grind out via energy, that's why I did it. Oh, that's a good draw. Aether Vial, generally speaking, is not a super good legacy card anymore, but my hand is slow enough that I am not actually going to provide enough pressure to goldfish my opponent before this Aether Vial becomes relevant. So it's probably going to be fine to good here. My opponent most of the time won't put in a creature on 1, will likely put in a creature on 2. Yeah, that's so good. That keeps me from playing the 2-drop. That gets me to my 3rd energy while the Vial ticks up. The flash creature is very, very strong. So here's where I choose whether or not I'm playing around Goblin Lackey. If my opponent has Goblin Lackey, it is probably a recent draw, like from this exact turn cycle. I think I am accordingly not going to play around it. It's very punishing if I am wrong, but I think that my resources are going to be so constrained this game, it's going to be difficult for me to push points of damage. I think I need to take them where I can get them and see if we get punished for it. No, I accept. 3rd land drop. The land drop's not super relevant here. My opponent doesn't super need to pay mana for spells for the remainder of this game. Life's bad. Life's worse. We can probably concede there. Yep, that's fine. I regret absolutely nothing. So, Containment Priest, very actively good. March, mana inefficient but playable. Wrath, probably fine. Could Lauren, I don't think I will. Thalia is an easy board out in this matchup as a starting point. It probably gets me 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't feel like I'm a very good Wrath of the Skies deck. Not saying that it shouldn't be here, but it's hard for me to not take collateral damage while doing this. Maybe when I'm on the play I don't do this. I try to just aggro win. I just feel like I am not doing something unfair enough for legacy standards here. This has a reasonable mix of lands and spells, but no real plan to win. I guess this is fine. I can try to keep Senu plus Felia. I will probably do that. So I have something that can mess with an early Goblin Lackey, which is cool. Oh, I can't counter my opponent's goblins. Oh no. There's a Lackey. There goes a Lackey. We're not going to get cute and try to disrupt that in combat and then get blown out by a munitions expert. Just don't think that makes sense here. I'll probably just play end of turn Felia here. More goblins. Wow, an actual factual Mog War Marshal. I haven't seen one of those in a hot minute. Let the record show I am about to get destroyed by a Pyrokinesis. And it's gonna be bad. So we go, yeah. Oh, maybe no Pyrokinesis. Yeah. Energy. Combat, attack, blink, block, have 1/1/1 goblin. Or do I just want to blink for energy, offer trade? No, I don't want to offer trade. So yeah. Then my opponent will take the chump, end up with a goblin. And this is kind of the point of the game that I hate, where I likely don't really have any card advantage coming. Thalia might end up not being able to attack through the creatures that are on board, and then I can't count on the Senu engine doing its thing. That costs my opponent a little life. So this is Graveyard Hate on the other side, just in case you haven't seen this one before. Down a Goblin, play a Mog War Marshal. My opponent could have 4-5 mana this turn. We're looking at like Muxus levels of mana next turn. Oh, we're going now. There goes Thalia. Yeah. And I am facing down something like a Muxus next turn. I have a Vigilant creature in the air. Don't have energy generation. Yeah, I expect that I'm just going to die. Even if it's not a Muxus and it's just a Goblin Ringleader plus Skirk Prospector with 4 or 5 bodies in play is horrifying enough. Fuck. Fuck. Yeah. So there goes my board. I can do the Senu thing to scry 2. Alright. So I can draw Witch Enchanter, take some damage, Solitude the Fury, kind of stabilize the board, and then play a large Jacked Rabbit. We'll take those. But this feels awful for me. 21. Play. Shock. Just wait. Very unlikely that my opponent is playing something like a Gaia's Cradle, where the Fury being in play for a touch longer matters. It's more likely that I could see something like another Sorcery Speed Fury that could potentially stop Solitude from blocking in combat this turn. Yeah, you know, this one feels pretty obvious. But we will take out the Fury, and assuming that my opponent plays a Magic the Gathering card, I think they are still ahead. Goblin Sharpshooter. What do you feel about attacking with Solitude? Would I be okay trading any 2 of these for this? With a large Jacked Rabbit coming? Yes. We'll send on in. I imagine my opponent just takes this damage. Life total is a resource. And then we are getting jacked. I have a 4/5. That is hard to kill with a Goblin Sharpshooter. Not impossible, but difficult. Problem is that I am going to create a large number of 1/1 rabbits that are killable via Goblin Sharpshooter. Yeah. So now my opponent will throw something at Jacked Rabbit to kill it. Yeah, and mark a damage with Goblin Sharpshooter. So, yeah. My opponent can then put a damage on Solitude, untap this, put a damage on Solitude. Yeah, no, this is awful. And this is not what you want to be top decking in a game of Legacy at this stage of the game. Like, Broadside plus Sharpshooter in any capacity are just going to eat this alive. If they even have to. That kills me. Maybe not this turn, but certainly next turn. Yeah, just taking another Broadside. The board control here is incredibly powerful. What's getting thrown? Matron is getting thrown at my host, so my opponent can ping me. Ping the host. Yeah, I'm at 13. My opponent has another Broadside coming. This is just not going to be enough. Yeah, let's tap out here. GG's. Alright, our opponent has revealed a Yorion. Our hand's so awkward. I just don't feel like my hands have been good with this deck. So, like, in theory, I would love to play Guide of Souls early. It doesn't, like, super look like it's working out here. So I could turn 1 Jacked Rabbit, turn 2 Guide of Souls. I don't have a 3rd land drop to do this turn 2. I mean, I guess I'm going to keep it. We put probably the expensive card under Chrome Mox. Alright, so this is going to be a blue Yorion deck list instead of D&T. Sure. So just value Yorion critters. Got it. So I'm going to now try to keep this, I think. I think I'm going to get rid of my Solitude. I just don't want another pitch card here. And we'll play our 2-drop. Now I can do this into the host if I want for my rabbit-oriented synergies. That can, in theory, start drawing me some cards. I say in theory because I expect some sort of Swords to Plowshares, Fatal Push sort of things to get involved here. If I play out the host, I am not getting Guide of Souls online as early as possible, which is a thing that I very much want to be doing. Gosh, everything is so awkward. So, like, my ideal sequencing is Guide of Souls into Thalia, but then that does not allow my Thalia to potentially tax removal spells with the best timing. So always this. Always yes. I don't know. I guess a Swords of Plowshares is still just castable no matter what. So let's optimize for energy. Feels like I am trying to build this very awkward Rube Goldberg machine where all the pieces in theory can come together and do things. Yeah, this is, yeah, what I'm talking about. I'm still going to play this Thalia pre-combat, think. And Jacked Rabbit will start doing Jacked Rabbit things. See if something like a Bowmaster happens. It does not. Be an Ice Fang Coatl here. Yep. So the Death Toucher, very good against the Jacked Rabbit, the Host sort of cards. My opponent is playing Ice Fang Coatl. I probably have to worry a little bit less about things like board wipes, which is good. There's land drop. The Ponder did not shuffle. You have a 1-drop creature? You playing Mana Dorks? You are playing Mana Dorks. Got it. That's actually pretty annoying. It makes my rabbit token worse. So, we're slamming the Host. Creature gets more power. I'm going to choose Jacked Rabbit. I'm going to go to combat. I'm going to declare attackers. I'm going to still turn everything sideways. I'm going to make 2 things. So this token is now going to get bigger. That way it doesn't get easily chump blocked by Delighted Halfling. And then I'm going to put this extra damage on the Thalia, which is probably not going to be blocked. I draw a card, so Jacked Rabbit trading with Ice Fang Coatl is not that big of an idea here. And here we have finally seen Rabbit into Rabbit do something meaningful. It's round 4. Yeah, no, fully expected that trade. We are just using this to push damage like we are trying to turn rabbits sideways. The long game probably is not going to favor me, but the short-term game is super favorable while this Thalia is still in play. When this Thalia exits play and my opponent can start playing multiple spells at the same time, things can get a little spooky. Are you on insects? No. You probably want my Thalia out of play. It could be the Host sometimes, depending on what the rest of the hand looks like. In my evaluation, the Thalia is the best card on my board, because it's stopping things like immediate follow-up Swords to Plowshares, but my opponent might not feel the same way. Junking a Force of Will with that Surveil, and getting a Delighted Halfling, sure. These mana darks are annoying. The fact that I don't have a 4th mana, also annoying. So I believe that Thalia is going face, and I will send... That is not Daybreak, ThrabenU. I'm going to send all of these at the Grist. I need to attack with 2 of them. I don't think there's a difference between attacking with 2 of them and 3 of them. I just lose 1 token either way. My opponent only has 1 card in hand. So my opponent goes to 8 and loses Grist. I'm going to play End of Turn Elia? Yeah, I'm going to play End of Turn Felia. Land drop? Do you have a play, or is it just Yorion to hand? Yorion to hand. That's great for me. Fucking stop it with these halflings. Like, these 1/2 creatures are a massive pain in my butt here. Oh my god, deck. We just bouncing a halfling out of the way? Probably. I am treating these rabbits as expendable. So, Delighted Halfling, just get out of the way. Push some extra points of damage. This is 5 this turn, bringing my opponent to 3. And we are just trying to get lethal next turn through the Yorion, which with a Felia in play seems pretty likely. We're more worried about like a random Ice Fang Coatl type draw here. Okay, so there is the Yorion. That can untap the Delighted Halfling and bounce the Abundant Growth for a card draw. So here's that card draw. And my opponent could randomly mise something like a Swords to Plowshares. That would be pretty bad for me. That does not do a ton here, but it very noticeably makes the Senu lethal by itself. I can get blown out really badly here. Okay, my opponent is just dead though. Fantastic. So we're playing against a slower control deck. I don't have extra threats to board into. I could play something like Lauren. Lauren can destroy Abundant Growths that are mana fixing for my opponent. Potentially some other random enchantments if my opponent is doing some Leyline Binding style shenanigans. Might go down on Solitudes. I don't really want to 2-for-1 removal myself on Delighted Halflings. The card's not that good. I think I'm doing this, and I don't think I'm going to mess around with any of these things. Sideboard has not felt strong with the things that we have gotten paired against today. All right, so I'm going to keep the hand. I'm just not in love with the hands that this deck produces, though. Oh, the Senu helps a lot there, kind of. Basically turns Chrome Mox into Lotus Petal. Yeah, weird. Okay, pass turn. You can make an argument that I should offer some other card up to Swords to Plowshares immediately, and try to save Felia for a little bit later when it's protectable via Caracas. But I want a legendary creature to be an unblocked attacker as quickly as possible, which leaves me overall in a very awkward position. So I am going to do this, and we're giving up Felia. Holy shit, we're not giving up Felia. Wow, what does that mean? Nice Fencoatl not doing it here. Land drop. Now I leave Caracas up. But which one of these two do I play? Because I get one of them. I think I value the Scry and the initial damage. Declare attackers. Declare Felia as attacker. I am going to blink my Chrome Mox. A little awkward if Felia is removed right now before it is unblocked. Cool. Alright, so Senu comes in play. I get my Scry 1. I'm looking for threats, so I'll top that. Yeah, okay, my opponent says, wow, I don't think they were expecting what has happened here. So now Chrome Mox comes back, Felia gets the +1/+1 counter. I'm not going to exile anything here. Hopefully I am not just going to eat a like Wrath of the Skies Toxic Deluge style card that wipes out my board quickly. I do just have 8 damage in play? Okay. Mana that is not being spent on removing my creatures is actively good for me. Wow, a wasteland. Sure. I mean, I'll float the mana. This mana is going to empty out, and then I expect to lose Felia? Correct. I still have 5 damage in play, plus Jacked Rabbit coming. Play this. Say yes. You don't give me any immediate benefit. Let's just attack for the 5. Opponent is at 8. Play a small Jacked Rabbit. Force of Will would be great for my opponent here. You know, in the white-based map, yeah, that's good. Traxa. Oh shit, there's Natural Order in my opponent's deck. That's not surprising given the Delighted Halflings. You know, in a white-based matchup, Senu being like the pseudo Mist Hollow Griffin that can keep coming back is maybe okay. Yeah, 100% Dryad or Natural Order in this deck. Prismatic Ending. Yes. I'll attack with my Vigilant Creature. Deal my opponent 2. Cast Sinkhole. My life total is borderline irrelevant. I am going to shock that in. I am not expecting my opponent to play the card Daze, but my life total is so irrelevant here that I am going to play around it anyway. I need to end this game in the next 2 or 3 turns in all likelihood, otherwise I expect my opponent to start pulling ahead. I have no energy, no card advantage. That gives a +1/+. Wow, my opponent says pretty sure no outs from here. I love to hear that. We have the GGs. And here I was very, very afraid. Alright, Rabbits put a win on the board. Finally, some good fucking hands. I like this hand a lot. So we Chrome Mox, Imprint War Leader, Witch Enchanter, play double Guide of Souls on turn 1 into Felia. That gives us 3 energy to do our flying thingy-mabobby on a turn 2 attack trigger. This hand is legitimately good. Probably one of the best opening hands of the entire league. This is where our opponent will just like Dark Ritual kill us on turn 1 before I get the thing. And I won't get to do it. And I will cry. 3 cards remaining. I lose one of my 2 mana sources here. It's a really big deal. Or if my opponent has just land plus reanimate, they just create a 4/4 creature on turn 1. Wait. That won't go well for them. Yeah, I just lose a mana source here. Alright, it is blue-black. So yeah. Warren War Leader under here. Guide of Souls. Second Guide of Souls. We are hoping Entomb plus Reanimate are not the remaining 2 cards. Okay, not Entomb, but a reanimation effect is already very strong. It is Psychic Frog. So, Valia can knock counters off of a Psychic Frog, which is cool. I think I'm just playing the Host here. It's Dazeable. I don't think I'm going to play around Daze with my opponent only having 1 card remaining. We'll buff one of these Guide of Souls. Get some energy. Now, Psychic Frog can be a 2/3. Means I can't attack with both of these creatures. I'll send in with this one, though. I will pay the energy here so that this creature flies. I'm getting in for 4 this turn. But this Psychic Frog is still just incredibly damning here and may just fully take my opponent back into this game that they should not belong in. This is just what 2 mana card advantage every turn looks like. Belly is cool, but I think I am just in the short-term damage mode here. So if I do this here, it's more or less guaranteed damage. If I do this here, Bowmaster nonsense is thing that potentially prevents the damage. A chump block here potentially prevents that. I think I'm going to do it here. Just spread my stuff out over the largest number of bodies so that Fatal Push style cards have the lowest possible impact on me here. I don't think I am trying to hold this back. I think I am trying to be the beatdown here because I do just have to fear, Entomb end of turn into an Atraxa. Yeah. So pushing the damage this turn so that Reanimate specifically is not putting Atraxa into play matters a lot. Cool. Anyway, it's not like I have made multiple hour-long videos talking about how bad Psychic Frog is for the format, but here we are. It's fine, folks. We can just use Felia to blink the Animate Dead. That'll remove the Atraxa from play. All right. Ponder, Animate Dead. There's the Scalding Tarn that they just got, so all these lands are gone. What instant did they take? A Force of Will, so that means not that, not that, not that. That's gone now. My opponent can discard the thing to Psychic Frog. Cool. Fair and Balanced Magic card. Whatever I play just gets Force of Willed. Illusion of Choice. I'm more likely to be able to double spell if I don't use Felia this turn. So let's go this one, which is Dazable. Yeah. Alright, so I have no valid attacks versus Atraxa and Psychic Frog. I am just not presenting lethal through Atraxa's life gain. Yeah, nope, that's a thing that happens. I probably get rid of this one. I don't think it matters. Like, I just lose an incredible amount of resources here. My opponent gets to draw a card this turn. Yeah. Anyway, Magic's fun. Move to the post-sideboard games. We can pick up a couple pieces of Graveyard Hate. I hate my sideboard. Like, March is terrible versus Frog in terms of actual mana cost efficiency, and I have no real card advantage in this deck, so giving up cards repeatedly for Chrome Mox, Solitude, and whatnot just doesn't feel good. Against the highly efficient Daze deck, I'm going to get rid of my 4-drops, then some Thalias. Like, if I cut too many of these rabbits, I lose the synergy my deck is based around. And making my things like Surgical Extraction cost more is pretty rough. Yeah, I think I'm fully off Thalia here. Note that that was the best hand that I had seen the entire league, and it just very easily lost to my opponent's mulligan to 5 after they also 2-for-1 themselves on turn 1 to take one of my cards. Just throwing it out there. This is incredibly mana inefficient. So turn 1 Guide of Souls, turn 2 no real play if I assume that I keep this to Solitude. I have 3 lands. I am a land light deck. My lands deal me 6 damage. I don't like this. Imprint a Senu for Guide of Souls. I don't have a legendary creature to go with this. I don't have a second mana source. This is not reasonably going to win the game. This has a chance. This is the best hand we've seen so far. Getting rid of that. Keeping this. Getting rid of that. Best turn. Okay. I mean, opponent is going for reanimation stuff. It seems like they are just going to hard discard a creature to hand size. Nope, they are a second main phase hipster, which is, I guess, allowed. All right, so Daze is a thing. I'm going to play this as Daze bait and hope that my opponent does not just Entomb Reanimate immediately, but I don't think I want to play the extremely valuable Containment Priest directly into Daze, even if I do have a second one. Yes, okay, so that helps to protect these from follow-up removal spells as well. That's perfectly fine. That's awkward as a draw. I think I'm just playing this and passing. It is so difficult for me to play around Daze while playing this deck because I have so few mana sources. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's cool. And anytime I do take time off to play around days, shit like this just happens. Sure. And I'm even still in the same position where, like, I am just in awful shape versus the things that my opponent is capable of doing. If I do anything to answer the Psychic Frog, I open myself up to losing the game to graveyard stuff. But if I don't do something to try to make myself good versus the Psychic Frog, I lose to the Psychic Frog. These are not healthy play patterns. Jacked Rabbit has resolved. My opponent can still fly over and just draw a card, though. Yep. Punish me with the Entomb. End my suffering. Uh-huh. Yep. Now this is the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I am out of this game now. The Archon just absolutely devastates me. If I hold up Containment Priest, my opponent makes this fly, goes in, draws cards, I play Containment Priest. As soon as Priest gets answered, my opponent takes this stuff out. Guess what's still the best deck in the format? Or very close to it. Alright, so let's wrap this one up. Overall thoughts on the deck list. Big thumbs down on this one. I do not believe that we are operating at a legacy power level, and the primary reason for that is that everything that we are doing only works if my opponent does not interact with us in any capacity. So, like, Jacked Rabbit into a host is theoretically good. Guide of Souls into a Jacked Rabbit is theoretically good. A Senu going under a Chrome Mox and then Phalia attacking, putting the Senu in is theoretically good. But all of these things just fall apart once a single removal spell gets involved, and the pieces aren't great individually. Like, Psychic Frog is a card you can cast. Murktide Regent is a card that you can cast. You know, the Sowing Mycospawns, the Glaring Fleshrakers of the world. There are so many individually powerful cards, many of which came out of, like, our most recent summer sets, like the Lord of the Rings stuff, the Modern Horizons sets, that wanting to play a deck that has these slower creature synergies when I could just be playing a deck that resolves one spell, maybe two spells, and wins the game, it's very hard to want to be doing this. A lot of this stuff here is standard legal, and you can probably just play a deck that looks like this in a lower power level format and be very happy with it. But we have almost no interaction versus combo in game one, so we're almost always losing the game to that. Even with 8 removal spells in game one for frogs, with no ability to recoup the losses from the solitudes when we don't have a Senu, I just run out of gas so quickly. You know, there's no Monarch, there's no Initiative, there's no cantripping creatures. I just don't have any of that. The sideboard is trying to address combo problems by dedicating a ton of slots to combo. And a lot of the slots that here just kind of aren't generically, I shouldn't say that. The things that were here were not super useful in the matchups that I played today. So for the most part, I kind of felt like I had a 4-card sideboard and I was unhappy with them because they are incredibly mana inefficient in my 22 mana source deck. I do not believe we were ever able to cast a Warren War Leader. We just did not live that dream, either because I died or because I did not reach enough mana. So while the ideas that are here are incredibly interesting, and we did kind of do the thing in one round, I don't think that this is powerful enough to be worth pursuing. I'm glad I played it. I think it's a cool idea, but I think you've just got to scrap this one, or you need to go into another color that gives you more to do at lower mana costs. We can maybe be this low of a mana source deck if we get rid of like these and we just find a way to operate on less mana. More 1-drop plays would be cool. You don't always have the Chrome Mox, and like I have 4 reasonable turn 1 plays when I am on the play. That's not fantastic. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at. You want to prove me wrong? You want to do better with the rabbits at your local event? TOAmagic.com, promo code ThrabenU to save you a little bit on your order. That was a rough one, folks. I'm not gonna lie to you. Hopefully tomorrow's deck is better. See ya. Okay, I lied. I'm not done. Come back. Couple more random thoughts. So I think there's a few other ways that you could adjust this. You could go an Ancient Tomb route with this deck list. And that helps with some of the problems of not being able to cast the more expensive cards. If you do that, you can start trying something like Chalice of the Void to help out with the game one combo matchup problem. But then you probably have to remove Swords to Plowshares and Guide of Souls, so that gets you to a weird spot. You try to just singularly play more powerful cards. Like you can try to just throw Ocelot Pride in. Ocelot Pride can do a decent job of eating removal, or is another thing that combos with Guide of Souls. You have so little mana that multi-spelling, like getting to 3 mana to do 2-drop, 1-drop is not always going to be around. I think this is kind of a difficult nut to crack. Anyway, just wanted to get that on paper. On video. Anyway, actually see you now.